When you learn to want what you need versus needing what you want, your life will become much easier. Shane here. Welcome back to another episode of Road Noise. I'm going to tell you a story about a little old lady that I used to call Grandma. She's no longer with us, but I heard that saying for the first time ever when I was younger from her. And as most things when we're younger, some things we retain, other things we don't. The things we do retain, we don't necessarily see them at face value for what they are. We don't quite fully grasp and understand the meanings or concepts behind them. And that's pretty standard, right? It took me a long time to understand what Grandma meant by that. So, my grandparents were both very big NASCAR fans. And, like, very big. Grandma was a Earnhardt Sr. fan. Grandpa, he kind of went with, Neil Bonnet back in the days, but he kind of just liked everybody. But so much so that I remember when I was younger, there was some times from time to time where they weren't around all that much, and they took it upon themselves at one point to buy an RV, pack everything they had up in it, and they would go make the circuit. They would travel the circuit, selling sunglasses and whatnot. For the most part, I remember them both being pretty simple people. But they enjoyed the sport of racing so much that is what they decided to do. And they'd travel the circuit, and they'd go track to track, and they got to meet people and hang out with all the fans and watch all the races and meet different drivers and do all of the things. And I think about that from time to time because, that was in an era where doing things like that was quite a bit crazier than it is today. Right? Today, you see people on social media and all of the, living the laptop lifestyles or just living in a van down by the river. And things have changed as how you can monetarily stay in a position you need to today by sharing those experiences, right? This was in a time that you better hope you have something to do when you're on the road like that, because if you weren't still working, you weren't getting paid, right? But they were simple in that aspect. And it makes more sense to me today than I ever thought it would, having had that come from them, come from Grandma, because that was kind of how she lived her life. For the most part, they had a restaurant where they lived that I think for decades they went out to eat to. I remember correctly, I think it was called Maria's. It was a pizza joint, like an old school down home pizza joint. And as long as they had their food, their coffee, and of course, being big NASCAR fans, had their Winstons, they were pretty good. They were pretty good. They had a nice house. They had cars. They had jobs, But they were just grounded, humble, everyday people. And it took me a lot of years before. I've never forgot that saying. I never forgot her telling me that. But it did take me years, and I mean decades, for that to really set in to to grasp the full understanding of it. You see, there's pros and cons to, generationally, which generation we grow up in and the lessons that we have versus the technology or the advancements just in life in general that we have access to. There's pros and cons as to the way you structure your life and the things that are looked at as important based on the time frames that you grew up in. But I think that message, whether 100 years ago or 100 years from now, I think that is one of those messages that will forever hold true. Because it's one of the biggest things that causes people in this life some of the biggest heartache and pain. And that is forgetting about how minimal we can keep things and still survive and sustain life and enjoy life. Versus getting caught up in the rat race and going for broke, if you will, trying to attain more and fulfill egos and show off flashy cars and be worried about what people think of us. I think it's one of the biggest things that people struggle with is worrying about what other people think and what level it's going to put you on based on what you drive, what you wear, all of those things. And I'm guilty of it. I care way less today than I once did, but I sure was victim to it. Today, try to keep things pretty simple. I still want a nice house for my family. I still want to have nice vehicles to drive. But I don't get twisted up on trying to need to attain more. There are so many more things today that I could have from a materialistic standpoint. I could have a much bigger house. I could have a way more expensive car. I have the ability to not go do what I enjoy doing every day for work and just take a month off of work. But the only reason I can do those things today is because at some point it hit me. And I started becoming more content with wanting the things that I actually needed versus needing the things that I want. So the only reason I'm able to do that today is because I didn't do that previously. Because if I had, I would be extended to the max, living on credit, stressed to no end, probably have marital problems, because I'd be on this constant hamster wheel, just trying to do more, do more, do more. And I go back to that from time to time, and I think about my grandparents and how peaceful they seemed most times. By just not trying to fill this infinite void all the time and just being content with what they had. They had what they needed and a few extra things, and they were good. I've tried to instill that into my kids today, and it is very hard in this world. And I don't always do it perfect by any means. Sometimes I, allow them to have things or experience things that I probably shouldn't if I'm trying to instill those types of morals and ethics and belief systems into them. But for the most part, they all get it and they understand it. So from time to time, it's okay to spoil your kids too. I definitely don't do an over-the-top amount of it. But I think it's just such an important piece of life that isn't discussed often enough. Because if you're not getting flashier and getting bigger and doing all the things, then, you know, everybody's afraid they might fall by the wayside and not be as important. I've never been in a position of peace and been so calm in my life than when I finally started giving zero shits about what other people think of me. I still like to hustle. I still like to put money away. Today I find more excitement and I get more gratitude from finding out or trying to see how much I can save versus how much I can spend. Right? Can I live on 25% of what I make? Can I still provide for my family? Can I put a good chunk away? That is like the new game at this point. So you still got to go out and do it. You still got to do things. Nobody's saying sit around and... But what type of peace and serenity and levelness, groundedness can you accomplish if you just kind of invert the two on themselves? So you don't have to just stay on the couch. You don't have to become a bum. You don't have to not have good work ethic. You don't have to not try to, achieve new goals and feats and stuff. But careful lying to yourself and convincing yourself that every time you accomplish just a little bit more, that means you need to attain a little bit more. There is no greater stress in this world than the monetary pressure life can put on you. So, I appreciate you listening, letting me tell you a little story about my grandparents. It's a lesson I will forever be grateful for. And I hope it helps you too. I hope everybody's doing well. I look forward to reading the comments, and I'll see you all tomorrow.